People have to live in unity.
We are still in transition.
Civil society has been decimated.
Of course, we rely on media.
And I think the government has not done enough.
The international community has failed to respond.
No place in the world is perfect.
Hello viewers, I'm your host Lipakshi Khurana with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show. The recently concluded G20 summit occupied the world's attention as New Delhi did something unique that has been lauded by countries across the world. It made a strong pitch to include the voices of countries that aren't in the G20 grouping. Let's talk about India's strong pitch for the global south, the countries that are least developed, underdeveloped and low-income economies.
G20 is now G21.
आगे की कार्रवाई शुरू करने से पहले मैं अफ्रीकन यूनियन के अध्यक्ष को G20 के स्थायी सदस्य के रूप में अपना स्थान ग्रहण करने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं.
And India made possible as Prime Minister Narendra Modi declared the African Union as a permanent member during the inaugural session of the two-day final summit of the G20 summit in New Delhi. Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of Comoros and Chair of the African Union, took the seat as the full member of the G20 shortly after the announcement. For the past few months, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been actively advocating for the African Union's inclusion as a member of the G20. Initially, the idea was conceived after the Voice of the Global South Summit in January this year. However, the idea was put into action early in June when Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrote to his counterparts among the G20 members, urging them to grant the African Union full membership during the September summit. Until now, only South Africa was the member of the G20. The entry of the 55-member African Union would provide a greater voice to the global south within the G20, where the G7 countries have long played a dominant role.
À ma grande satisfaction, l'admission du G20 a été actée dès l'ouverture du sommet. Son Excellence M. Modi, Premier ministre de l'Inde, et les membres du G20 ont entériné l'adhésion de l'Union africaine au sein de cette grande instance décisionnelle économique. Bien sûr. Effectivement, l'Afrique a des problèmes internes qu'elle doit tout faire pour trouver des solutions. Mais avec le multilatéralisme qui s'impose à l'instant T, personne ne peut rien faire seul. Donc effectivement, notre adhésion au G20, effectivement, ça peut nous permettre à ce que ces pays-là, qui sont les grands décideurs du monde financier et économique, ça peut nous permettre de ce partenariat qui peut nous aider à résoudre les problèmes africains.
India made history by hosting the G20 summit for the first time in New Delhi on September 9 to 10 and was marked by extensive preparations to showcase India's rich traditions and strengths. Throughout its presidency, India placed a strong emphasis on several critical issues, including promoting inclusive growth, fostering digital innovation, enhancing climate resilience, and ensuring equitable global health access. During the summit, India announced the launch of a global biofuel alliance with the United States and Brazil as its founding members to boost the use of cleaner fuels. The G20 presidential chair also announced India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, a multinational rail and ports deal linking the Middle East and South Asia on the sidelines of the summit. The New Delhi Declaration was also accepted, reaffirming that the G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation, and the member countries acknowledged that the G20 is not the platform for geopolitical and security issues, although these issues can have consequences for the global economy. The consensus came up as a surprise as G20 is deeply divided over the war in Ukraine, with Western nations earlier pushing for strong condemnations of Russia in the leaders' declaration, while others demanded a focus on broader economic issues. India's Foreign Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar said China, Russia's main major ally, was supportive of the outcome.
Everybody helped because everybody came together for the consensus. But I think if Sherpa would bear me out, I think the emerging markets took a particular lead on this, and many of us have a strong history of working together. Bear in mind that actually you have 4 developing countries in succession as G20 presidency: Indonesia, us, Brazil and South Africa. So, but I would say, rather than who helped, the point to be recognized is that a common landing point was ultimately fashioned out.
World Bank President Ajay Banga said that G20 Delhi Declaration would help in bringing reforms and redefine the vision of the bank.
The declaration has got many good parts to it. Selfishly, it has a great deal to do with the multilateral banks, which is good for me because it gives me the wind in my sails for me to keep pushing for reform and getting the bank to work better. That's the way I think about it.
The 2023 summit serves as a victory lap for India, as it has made great strides in positioning itself as a global leader and helped advance concerns of non-G20 members.
And let's now move to Bangladesh, a South Asian nation currently on the radar of global geopolitics. A neighbor and close ally of India, Bangladesh is witnessing huge investments and diplomatic engagements from China that have sounded alerts to the Western world. Recently, French President Emmanuel Macron visited Dhaka to strengthen diplomatic ties and restrict Chinese influence in the country. We have a report.
The first Dhaka Elevated Expressway, one of Bangladesh's major flagship infrastructure projects aiming to improve transport efficiency and productivity, is jointly constructed by 2 Chinese companies and a Thai company. Similarly, a Chinese-built underwater tunnel project in Bangladesh's second-largest city, Chattogram, is set to drive local economic development and promote regional connectivity. In capital Dhaka, a China-funded program sewage treatment plant has been built under Belt and Road Cooperation Framework. Be it elevated expressway, underwater tunnel or a sewage plant, many mega projects funded by China in Bangladesh is sending alert sounds to the West. French President Emmanuel Macron landed in Dhaka and spoke of Europe as a third way in a region increasingly under the sway of China-US rivalry.
Nous avons une volonté commune de préserver l'indépendance de nos pays, de ne céder à aucune pression extérieure et, malgré les conflits en cours, au fond, de garder la liberté qui va avec la souveraineté. Je défends, vous le savez, cette troisième voie dans l'Indo-Pacifique fondée sur le respect de la souveraineté et l'autonomie stratégique de nos partenaires.
President Macron's 2-day stopover in Dhaka was part of a French strategy to target mid-sized countries in a region where superpowers such as China, Russia, or the US are jostling for influence. The French leader, who Hasina called a breath of fresh air in international politics, came on the heels of Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who visited Bangladesh a few days before the G20 summit held in New Delhi.
এশীয় ও প্রশান্ত মহাসাগরীয় অঞ্চলে ভূ রাজনৈতিক স্থিতিশীলতা নিশ্চিত করতে বাংলাদেশ ও ফ্রান্সের নেতৃস্থানীয় দায়িত্বশীল ভূমিকা বাংলাদেশে ও ফ্রান্সে নেতৃস্থানীয় ও দায়িত্বশীল ভূমিকা পালন করবে।
Bangladesh has seen frequent high-level visits by China and the United States as both superpowers are aiming to limit the other's gains while securing their own advancement. Such high-level diplomacy reflects the broader geopolitical competition between the United States and China and their efforts to court Bangladesh, a geostrategically significant country situated on the head of the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh already enjoys close and historical ties with neighboring India as both countries have understandings in dealing with trade and security issues. By contrast, China's entry into Bangladesh is new and nascent, manifested mainly after President Xi Jinping's signature initiative, Belt and Road Initiative, was launched in 2013.
Moving on, the relations between Pakistan and Taliban-ruled Afghanistan are getting worse as the key border crossing remains closed between the two neighbours. The trade and people's movement remained halted at the Torkham border crossing for the past several days due to an exchange of fire between the Afghan and Pakistani security forces. We have a report.
Hundreds of trucks carrying essential goods have been stranded on both sides since the crossing in Pakistan's northwest was shut down after an exchange of fire in a dispute over an under-construction Afghan outpost. The Torkham border point is the main point of transit for travelers and goods between Pakistan and landlocked Afghanistan. Pakistan said the Taliban administration had tried to encroach on its territory with the construction of an unlawful structure and accused Afghan forces of indiscriminate firing in an incident that led to the closure of the main border transit point. With the disruption of the transit of trucks, the loading of goods in the southern port of Karachi has been disrupted. The two countries have been trading blame over border issues and armed attacks for months.
उधर से पैरंग में या इधर से पैरंग में ग्रस ग्रुस शुरू हो गया और बस हम लोग इधर गाड़ी के नीचे कर कभी उस तरफ लोग भागते हैं बस पता नहीं चलता जंग हो गया बस अभी तकरीबन 1 घंटा या 1.5 घंटा हो गया फिर बस किया झगड़ा ख़त्म हो गया लेकिन मुसीबत यह है कि हम लोग पैसा मैसा हमारे पास नहीं है.
Pakistan is in the grip of an economic downturn, while Afghanistan is still struggling to revive its economy due to its international isolation more than 2 years after the Taliban took over Kabul. Disputes linked to the 1,615-mile border have been a bone of contention between the neighbors for decades.
दुकान همدال د چولو دکان دی او کورخه او چولې خرڅو او کورونه افغانستان کې د کار هم کوو پرون په 7 بجې باندې ډزې شولې ډزو کې مو سر ډک بډک کې خو دکان کې او دکانونه را بند کړو بس نو لاړ وو تختیدو.
Pakistan was one of the 3 nations to grant formal recognition to the previous Taliban government of 1996 to 2001. But like all other countries, Pakistan has withheld recognition of the current Taliban administration. Diplomatic ties have also frayed over frequent flare-ups along their border, including sporadic gunfights and crossing closures. Islamabad also complains Kabul is failing to secure its frontier, a colonial-era demarcation that every Afghan government has disputed, allowing armed group fighters to cross and strike on Pakistan's soil. According to the Pakistan Institute for Conflict and Security Studies, there was an increase in attacks of almost 80% in the first half of 2023 compared to last year.
Time now for Asia This Week, the stories from across the continent.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman held talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi. Saudi Arabia and India signed several memorandums of understanding to boost economic cooperation and investments in the countries. The two leaders reviewed trade ties and expressed confidence in improving commercial links between the two nations. Saudi Arabia's Investment Minister Khalid Al-Faleh led a senior delegation to the India-Saudi Investment Forum, where the signing of these agreements between the two countries took place. India and Saudi Arabia bolster economic bonds with 50+ agreements. New ports and railway corridors for the Middle East and South Asia will include train links to India. The Indian delegation echoed the sentiment, stating that it felt the time was right to develop the bilateral relationship into an alliance of strength and economic power. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol vowed to strengthen cooperation with allies to achieve overwhelming capabilities against North Korea's threats, as he witnessed the country's navy marking the anniversary of a historical landing with a reenactment. Yoon made the remarks during a speech at a ceremony to commemorate the 73rd anniversary of the Incheon landing operation, which was commanded by a US general and turned the tide of the 1950-53 Korean War in favor of South Korean troops. Communist North Korean troops launched a surprise attack across the 38th parallel into South Korea in 1950. US-led United Nations forces battled Chinese and Soviet-backed North Korea, in which 3 million soldiers and civilians were killed and 5 million became refugees. Until now, the two sides remain technically at war after the civil conflict ended in a truce, not a treaty. Recently, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held a rare summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where they discussed military matters and possible Russian help for the North Korea satellite program. An Israeli company demonstrated its electric vertical takeoff and landing eVTOL, which comes in various sizes, can be a solution in emergency scenarios. The company turned Jerusalem's Hadassah Ein Kerem hospital parking lot into a temporary helipad. In one test, a big eVTOL designed to carry one person took off and flew above Jerusalem before returning to land. A smaller eVTOL then carried a box similar to one that would carry medical supplies. Yoeli Orr, founder and CEO of Kando, the company developing the eVTOLs, said that the drone is capable of carrying up to 250 kilograms and flying a distance of about 30 kilometers. Companies across the globe have so far been unable to find the key to monetizing the potential of air mobility, whether for delivering goods or for human travelers. A broader trust challenge looms too, with many flying taxi makers pushing back their dates for commercial launch as they struggle to bring their projects to fruition.
Lastly, we take you to the beautiful city of Bhubaneswar in Odisha to witness a mesmerizing celebration of a spectacular event, the Gurukelu Charan Mohapatra Dance Festival. This festival typically features performances by some of the most accomplished Odissi dancers from India and around the world. The festival is not only a tribute to the legendary Gurukelu Charan Mohapatra, but also a platform for talented dancers to showcase their artistry. Have a look at this cultural extravaganza.
Odisha is well known as a land of tribes, and every tribe has its distinct song and significant dance form. The Odia music forms a part of Indian classical music. The dance forms of Odisha are among the most famous cultural dances across the country. The classical dance Odissi holds the closest resemblance to temple sculpture than the other existing varieties of dance. The iconic Odissi dance institution, Srajan Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra Odissi Nritya Basa, continues to host its flagship annual classical dance and music festival in memory of Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra. Its aim is to create awareness and sustain the classical tradition of Odissi dance and music. The 29th edition of the Guru Kelucharan Mohapatra Dance and Award Ceremony was organized by Srajan at Rabindra Mandap in Bhubaneswar.
I'm very lucky to be here at this time to be able to visit this festival.
The coveted award ceremony hosted 4 evenings featuring the finest dance and music performances with a focus on the best possible mashup of artists and genres. The festival witnessed solo dance performances accompanied by a live orchestra in the first half of each evening, followed by music recitals in the second half. The program commenced with a solo Kathak dance recital by Sheila Mehta, renowned Kathak exponent of the Lucknow Gharana. Her recital comprised 3 eclectic and beautiful dance presentations that stayed true to the integrity of her Gharana.
ये एक तीर्थ धाम यात्रा की तरह है. हम सिर्फ नहीं है, बहुत जन आर्टिस्ट को यहाँ पर परफॉर्म करने का, क्योंकि ये एक तरीके से जब ये ऐसे लेजेंडरी गुरु जो आज नहीं होते हुए भी उसकी प्रेजेंस बहुत है, गहरी प्रेजेंस है, और सिर्फ भुवनेश्वर में है ऐसा नहीं है. मैं मुंबई में हूँ, मैं यूएसए में भी रहती हूँ, मेरे सेंटर यूरोप में भी है. गुरुजी का नाम चारों तरफ है, तो ऐसे फेस्टिवल करने से हम गुरुजी को याद करते हैं. और यहाँ आके मुझे लगता है कि एक बहुत ऐसे there are no words to say how nice we feel about it.
The event was attended both physically and virtually by several dignitaries, influential citizens, luminaries from the world of art, and audiences from across India and abroad. The entire festival was curated, conceptualized and designed by Guru Ratikant Mohapatra, and the program was well executed by Sri Devi Prasad Mishra. In this new era, the annual event forges a bridge between academia and performing arts and provides the state audience with exposure to the best classical music as well.
Srajan has curated this year's festival with an eye on the most suitable combination of artist and genre with an eclectic mix of presentations. And with that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.
People have to live in unity.
We are still in transition.
Civil society has been decimated.
Of course, we rely on media.
And I think the government has not done enough.
The international community has failed to respond.
No place in the world is perfect.